All right, hey everyone, Daniel here. Thanks for joining me today. And today's video is going to revisit something we've explored before, my version of joint rotations. And one of the reasons I like these so much is it doesn't take a whole lot of warm-up. In fact, it is the warm-up. So you can just jump right into it, roll out of bed and start to do these. And it really makes a difference in my practice and just in my day in general. I think that it's a great way to just get 20 minutes of simple movement in, and that could be it for the day. Or you can really tailor it to be a preparatory sequence for whatever sort of movement you might be exploring. So there's a version I always do before handstands, there's a version I do before training my flexibility, and I always do some sort of version of these before many of my yoga classes, depending on what we're going to be focusing on for that month or so. So all that you'll need for this practice today is yourself. And a mat is nice, but if you don't have a mat, right, you could definitely do this on a carpeted area or any place that just you feel comfortable practicing on. And so with all that being said, we'll get right into it. So let's start by rolling out the head and the neck. So first, let's draw chin to chest, ear to shoulder, head to back, ear to shoulder. And you're trying to find your full range without putting in a whole lot of effort. So not trying to force yourself into any sort of depth, but simply discovering the space that's already there, and by moving into it, right, new spaces will begin to become available. And then start to take those circles the other way. So chin to chest, ear to shoulder, head to back, ear to shoulder. And full, steady breaths. Really see if you can feel for breathing with all of your lungs. And then next time your head comes to center, you can take your hands and join them together and just start to make some circles through the wrists. And right, if there's any other sort of intuitive movements that your body wants to explore as you take these motions, right, absolutely go for it. And start to circle the other direction. So I always like to do it in both directions. Good. And then let's let the hands release for a moment and start to find just a gentle crisscross of your arms. And as you take this crisscross, I like to imagine a widening of the front of my body as I draw my arms back, and a widening of the back of my body as I draw my arms forward. And starting to take that into more of a simple twist. And this, I just kind of think of being floppy a little bit, right? Not flingy, but floppy. And just kind of think of how I was as a child, and I used to just love to do this and just kind of spinning around and letting my arms just kind of flail. So maybe that's why I like it so much as I'm older. And let's draw yourself to center, interlace your hands, flip your palms up towards the sky, and just start to find a gentle tick-tock from left to right, left to right. If keeping the hands interlaced doesn't feel sustainable for you, right, you can totally do this with the hands apart. Either way, feel for trying to reach your rib cage up a little bit higher every pass through. Good. And then come through center. Allow your arms to release. And then bring the feet out in front of you if they're not there already. You can come into a cross-legged seat. You can also come into a butterfly by bringing the soles of your feet together. Or you can take the feet kind of wide. Whether the legs are straight or bent, that's up to you. So kind of like a straddle. And then whatever choice that you made with the seats, you're going to start to make some circles through the hips. Now, as I draw my heart forward, I feel for trying to send my sits bones back. And I'm just trying to stay in front of my sits bones the best that I can. And start to circle the other direction, big circles. Steady breathing. noticing what you feel as you do the things. Good. Let's draw back to center. Take your hands to your knees and close your knees. Bring the soles of your feet to the floor. Let's take the feet just a little bit wider than hips width. You can take your hands behind you and start to make some crisscross with the knees. So kind of an internal and external rotation of the hips. And if you wanted to do this with a little bit more stabilization through the core, you can take your hands away. If you start to do this and you're like, I don't like this, bring your hands back down to the ground. It might make it a little bit more enjoyable. And let's say next time your legs fall over to the right, let them stay that way. And find a 90 degree through the right knee and the left knee. Turn your upper body towards your right shin. You can stay upright or you can start to hinge your body forward and just fold over your right leg. I'm not going to be here for very long, so just a couple of breaths. It's probably a couple. Draw yourself back up and then just allow your legs to go over the other way. So 90 degree through the knees. My knees in line with my hip, my knees in line with my hip. And then upright or fold forward and lengthen over your left leg. Just like 2 breaths here. That was probably like 2 breaths. Draw yourself back to center and then take your hands underneath your thighs and then lightly pull away from your thighs and tuck your chin towards your chest. And feel for breathing right in between your shoulder blades. And then start to draw your stomach towards your thighs and walk your hands behind you. Push strongly into your hands. Lift your gaze up and open the front of your throats. Feel for drawing 2 shoulder blades together to widen through the front of the chest. Nice. Start to slowly draw yourself back. And then cross your ankles, walk your hands in front of you, come to a tabletop. So in your tabletop, find your hands underneath your shoulders and root down through the knuckle of each palm. And then start to make some circles around your wrists. Right, and they can be big circles. They can be small circles. I'm just trying to get into the whole perimeter of the wrist to wake them up and warm them up. And start to circle the other way because, again, we like to take things in both directions. Hit all those corners. Alrighty. And then pause and center. And start to explore your cats and cows. So that could be up and down. It can be a little bit more side to side. I like to take a couple with my fingers flipped towards me. And that just helps me get a little bit more into my wrists and my forearms to stretch them out. Especially if you do a lot of typing or texting, this can feel maybe quite intense, but also probably quite necessary. And then if you feel like you need to even anything out, start to even things out. Once you come back to your tabletop, flip your fingers back forward towards the top of your mat. And then walk your hands forward. And then start to melt your heart down like you're coming into puppy. And then lift up. And then just going through that motion a few times. So up and down. The whole time, you keep pushing strongly into your hands. And continue to feel for a sense of widening your upper back. And stick with it for 3. You have 2. 1, this time stay down in your puppy. And so it can be chin to your chest, or it can be chin to the mat. You can take the hands a little bit wider if that feels better for your shoulders. Or you can keep the hands about shoulder width distance apart. And see if you can find a place that feels sustainable. And keep it active, so keep pushing your hands into the ground. And continue to feel for a sense of widening your upper back. And we'll say like 3 more breaths here. Nice. And then start to slowly draw yourself forward onto your belly for a Sphinx pose. As you come into your Sphinx pose, kick your feet into the floor, roots your pelvis into the floor. And then as you press down through hands, wrists, and elbows, imagine you're trying to slide your heart towards the top of your mat. Last little bit, feel for your shoulder blades drawing together to broaden through the front side of the body just a little bit more. And then curl your toes under, begin to lift up your belly, your hips, your thighs, and your knees come into plank pose. And then in your plank pose, today, just start to drop the hips from right to left. Try and keep the spine fairly neutral and keep your belly drawn in and up. Let's say for 3. You got 2. You got 1. Back to center. Lower down to knees, thighs, hips, belly, Sphinx. And then lower all the way down to your belly. And take your arms out to the sides, 90-degree bend to each elbow. Press strongly into your right arm, and then roll to the right. Tense up on your left fingertips, roll and lean towards the right arm. Now you can keep your left hand where it is. You can also take your left arm, wrap it around. You might even grab a hold of your foot. But just check out what your right arm is doing, right? Make sure that it's doing something, so keep pushing it into the floor. So as you stretch that area, you're also asking those muscles to engage and stay active. They're participating. One more breath there. And then come on back to your belly. Arms out to the side, 90-degree bend to the elbows. And then roll to the left. Pick your right foot up, drop it behind. Tense up on your right fingers. You can take your hand and keep it where it is. Or you can, again, wrap it around, maybe grab your ankle or foot, or just kind of like let it hang out there. But remember, left arm, very active. Push it into the floor. Not just hanging out on the couch, hoping to get a free meal, right? It's working for that meal. So push your hand and arm down and give yourself one more breath there. All right, let's come on back to the belly. Good. And you start to press yourself back to a child's pose. And then roll yourself up. And then bring your feet out in front of you, lower down to your back. But as you lower down to your back, interlace your hands behind your head. And you do a couple of rounds of bicycles. And so you can either keep the knees bent or you can straighten the legs. Either way, every time you draw your elbow to your knee, try and lift your low back off of the ground if you want that extra little bit of, ooh, that's work. And just start to go on your own at a nice leisurely pace. Let's say for 4. You got 3. You got 2. 1. Hug your right leg in. Interlace your hands behind your leg and just start to straighten and bend, straighten and bend. And sometimes I like to dig my fingertips into my hamstrings, like I'm giving myself a little massage. And sometimes I just like to keep my hands still. And just know that there's always room to explore, always room to really make this work for wherever you're at on any given day. And let's say keep the leg straight or bent, that's up to you. And scoot your hips off to the right first, and then drag your leg over to the left for a little twist. A couple of things about the twist. And keep 2 shoulders heavy towards the floor. So the right shoulder might lift away, that's okay. But just be mindful you're not rolling completely out of the twist. You need to give it some sort of a boundary. So just feel for a heaviness there. And then it's subtle, but I like to feel for my outer right hip moving towards the top of my mat or moving towards my left foot. That just helps me get into my side body a little bit more in addition to the twist. Let's say one more breath there. Good, and then let's come on back to center. Scoot your hips back to where they started. And then either legs straight or legs bent, but back to your bicycles. Let's say for 5. Maybe find that little lift of low back for 4. You have 3. You got 2. 1. Left leg in, hug it, and then do some straighten and bending. And right, your leg might get all the way straight, it doesn't have to. Your leg might get closer, it doesn't have to. Remember, nothing to force, just exploring, getting an idea of where the body's at today. And it's your choice, you can keep the leg straight or bent. Let's scoot your hips off to the left first, then drag your leg over to the right. Remember, 2 shoulders heavy, right? Not forcing the shoulder down, but also, right, not rolling away from the twist. And then it's subtle, but something to look for. Feel for your outer left hip, moving away from your left shoulder to find a little bit more space along the side body as you twist in addition. And we'll say like 2 more breaths here. Just loving life. All right, let's draw back to center, scoot your hips back to where they started, and then hug your knees in and start to make some circles through the hips. Open and close, and then circle the other way. Good, and then you're gonna take a happy baby. So you can either take the hands behind the thighs and pull your knees towards the floor. You could take your hands to your ankles and do the same. You could also grab for big toes or grab a hold of your heels. I always like to feel for my entire back being pressed to the floor. So if you feel like your back is lifting a whole lot and you want to take your hands a little bit lower to get it back down to the ground, that could be a nice choice. But there's a lot of room here to play. Right, so it could just be that kick into hands and pull back into the legs, or it could be a little bit more fluid. You could move it around. You could start to straighten one leg, you could start to straighten the other, you could straighten both. Right, explore and maybe even have a little bit of fun with it. And I mean, if you've ever like seen a baby, right, they do this stuff all the time. And I really think they're enjoying it. So, right, find some inspiration there. All right, if you need to even anything out, start to even it out. And then hug your knees in towards your hearts. And then tuck your chin in towards your chest. Take a really big breath. Feel your ribs press into the floor and draw towards your thighs. Hold the next breath at the top. And when it's time to exhale, release, let your arms, let your legs go. And just take 5 breaths here. Lying on your back. Letting the stillness settle in. And just feeling that feeling of being in your body after treating it well. You're, of course, welcome to stay lying on your back. And whatever you do for the rest of your day, I really hope it's fantastic. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out either here or you can find my email or contact me on social media as well. And know that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I do a live version of this from 10 a.m. Eastern time to about 10:20, 10:25. About 20 minutes of some simple, gentle movement followed by a few minutes of some semi-guided meditation. You can just show up, nothing to sign up or pay, right? You just come and move your body. Well, thank you all so very much. Have a really fantastic day and look forward to hearing from you, maybe even seeing you soon. Take care.